begin by congratulating and thanking Joey for doing such a good job organizing. I want to congratulate Green 50 Vermont, Transition Town Vermont, VCAN, and Climate Neutral Now. It is so important to have a grassroots movement for change. And somebody recently compared what we need to do with climate with what we've done, for example, with recycling in Vermont. And we take recycling for granted. Like when you go out of Vermont and you go to somebody's house and they put a can in the garbage can, aren't you just alarmed? Like, what are they thinking? You know, it's like throwing away good money. Maybe it's the Yankees or something. And we have taken personal responsibility for our solid waste problem in Vermont in a way that has made a real difference. Now, we could do more. You know, Secretary Painter, I can tell you, we're not reaching our goals there. But we're not going to get our arms around climate just here in the State House. It's not going to be enough. And I have to say, I do want to do a shout out to Tony Khan. I mean, he's taken real leadership. He and Sarah Edwards have taken real leadership on energy and climate. I want to do a shout out to Ginny Lyons. I mean, she takes this stuff seriously. And of course, I'm here representing the governor, Peter Shumlin. And you may know that when he came back to the State House after leaving for some years and became president of the Senate, his single biggest focus was climate. And that was at a time when we weren't really talking about it enough. So I want to shout out to him too, because I know that global climate change will be a central issue of his administration. As the Secretary of A&R, I've got this wonderful opportunity, and that's because I've got this incredible staff of scientists and biologists and engineers, really smart, committed people working in the agency. And, you know, we're working on a lot of things. You know, of course, water quality in Lake Champlain, you hear a lot about that, and the solid waste issues, and there's a whole variety of issues. But one of the things that I'm bringing to this position is that I believe the capstone issue right now for the agency and for the state is global climate change. Not just in terms of thinking about our contributions to greenhouse gas, but you all know, right, it's here. We are seeing climate change. And so as responsible stewards of the environment, we've got to do a couple things. One is we need to take seriously our obligation to reduce CO2 emissions, right? And that's policy, but it's also personal responsibility, how we make choices, how we do land use planning. But we also have to think about what it means that we've had climate change. We need to think about what that means for our wildlife and for our ecosystem. We need to plan because we're going to have pests who survive the winter. How many of you years ago thought Lyme's disease? We don't have to think about that here in Vermont, right? Because those ticks couldn't winter over. Well, now we've got Lyme's disease in Vermont. I remember years ago in the 70s, there was no poison ivy. And now I've got to teach my kids what poison ivy looks like because poison ivy can winter over. It's going to affect our sugaring. It's going to affect the water levels in our ponds and our streams and our rivers. It's going to affect us, and we need to think forward and plan and be ready, know what it means, and get ready for it. The climate change is real. You all know that, and it's when you take a look at the average temperatures and the increase in our temperatures by the end of the century. Vermont's climate is expected to look at a minimum like Northern Virginia's, and it could be like North Carolina's. I mean, that's a lot of change. I don't know if any of you ever lived in North Virginia. It's really, you moved here on purpose, right? You like the sea. The sea is better here. So some of these changes are avoidable, but not all of them. And we need to act now. We've got to do our part to reduce CO2 emissions, and when we take a look at what our contribution is, in 2008 our greenhouse gas emissions were about 8.4 million metric tons. 47% of them, not surprising, were from what? Can you guess? Cars, right? Transportation. We're a rural state. That's going to be the big elephant in every room when we're talking about our contributions. 32%, though, were from residential and commercial, industrial fuel use. That's like home heating. And I actually was running a little late because I had the guys at my house who were blowing in insulation where they missed last year when we did our retrofit. And he was telling me the story of whatever was going on there. That's significant, how much we're burning in fuel oil. 10% from agriculture, only 4% from electricity. We do really well with that here in Vermont. 4% were from various industrial processes, and 3% was from the off-gas from waste in landfills. We established in some goals of reducing emissions from a 1990 baseline level, and our goals were pretty ambitious, although, when we think about the scope of the problem, maybe not ambitious enough. The goal was to reduce our emissions 25% by 2012. That's coming up soon. 50% by 2028, and if possible, 75% by 2050. We are not on target right now to meet those goals. Okay, we're just not going to make it there. Although we are back to we're close to our 1990 emission level, so we are cutting back. We are making some strides, and we are down actually significantly from our high that was in 2004. So we are making some progress. I believe there's some things we need to be doing now. We've got to increase our use of low carbon energy sources, renewable energy, when it comes to every sector. That's electricity, heating, and transportation. We've got an opportunity with the smart grid going out there. You're all aware of the smart grid. We have an opportunity to start planning for the use of electric vehicles. And I heard for the first time an advertisement on DEV for a fully electric car being sold by, now I don't remember what manufacturer it is, but it was one of they used to be the big four, but now I don't know if they're the little four, but one of our was it the Chevy Bolt? Yes, the Chevy Bolt. So it is coming, and as a state, we can make sure we've got the infrastructure in place to be ready. We need to, with heating, we have an opportunity to move from barn oil, dependency on barn oil, to pellets, and to wood, and to other alternatives, solar hot water that goes through a home and heats the home while it's also heating the water. I've seen systems that work really well. We need to get creative. We need to make sure that there are the right incentives in place so it makes sense for individuals to make good choices. And then, of course, electricity, we're facing a challenge. I mean, I don't know what folks here think about the future of Vermont Yankee, but I know that I don't think there is a future for Vermont Yankee because it's not safe. And it's not about nuclear generally. It's about an aging plant that's problematic on the banks of the Connecticut River. And so we've got an opportunity now to make sure that we're planning for our energy future as a state in a way that is sustainable, but also makes sense when it comes to the future warming, our contributions to CO2 emissions. In my agency, we are also thinking a lot about how do we prepare for the change? How do we mitigate the impacts of what we've seen already in global climate change? Most notably in forestry, it's the invasives. In agriculture, we're going to have longer growing seasons, which are great, but we're also going to have new pests that we haven't had to deal with before because they can winter over. And then, of course, there's this whole area of emergency preparedness. We're seeing floods, we're seeing big storms, we're seeing stream erosion, and so forth. And so as a state, as a nation, really as a world, we need to be thinking about this to make sure that we're prepared. Conversations about global climate change are not new in my office. It's not new with this administration. They're a group of people who've been working on climate issues for many years, and I'm going to continue that leadership. And with the team in the back is Chris Recchia, who's my deputy. He's been involved in climate issues for many years. Together, working with staff who's there. Justin Johnson is the deputy the need to use fossil fuels or conversions. They've got now some great solar technology for mobile homes, for low-income people, which is great for solar hot water, solar electricity. It's affordable and it makes sense from an environmental perspective. So we're working on moving towards having a global climate initiative across state agencies, and we're really proud to be working on that. We are also active members of RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and through RGGI we're working towards a 10% reduction in the electricity sector by 2018. And while we're doing pretty well here in Vermont, a lot of New England relies on coal power plants and natural gas. And so that's got to stop. We're working across agencies already with VTrans, with the Department of Agriculture, the Public Service Department, to help develop a statewide energy plan. We used to have some, and it's time to start dusting them off and making them relevant, taking into account climate change. And also, in this building right now, there are talks about taking another look at how we do permitting. Because we saw some of the greatest laws in the nation with land use regulation, right? We're all proud of Act 250 and Act 200. But they were written at a time when climate was not an issue. It was an issue, but nobody was talking about it. Scientists weren't bringing it to the fore at that point. And so it's an old, outdated law. And as we think about how we're planning our communities for the future, it is going to be really important that we consider climate as a factor. And I guess this brings me to my real point. I'm telling you a lot about what we're doing, what we're hoping to do, but my point is this. We can make climate a capstone issue in our agency, but one of the things that I know is that we are not going to address this issue, this global issue, from the halls of the State House. We're not going to successfully address it, in the agencies that are devoted to environmental stewardship. We're only going to turn climate around and get a handle on it if we create a culture shift and a thinking shift. It's the idea that each one of us has to take personal responsibility. We have to make choices in our lives, how we live. And that's the only thing that's ultimately going to make a difference. We need the laws too, because we need to we need to regulate how we're producing energy. Some of the big issues, how industry, how industry participates. But truly, one of the wonderful things about you all being here today is you're the activists. You're the people in your communities who can make this happen. Like recycling, right? There was a culture shift. How many of you old-timers like me remember when recycling just started coming to Vermont? And it took some, I've got to rinse out my hands, what's up with that? And now you know people, you take it for granted, right? When you see somebody taking newspapers or cans or whatever, have you ever seen someone throw a can out the window? You can go to places and people still throw trash out of the window of their cars. Now when that happens, we get down the license plate so that we can try to find their phone numbers to call them up, and if they're from out of state, whatever. But anyway, what I want to encourage you is to keep up the good work. I love the VCAN model, the idea that this has got to be a grassroots movement. And one of the images that I like to think about is the Grand Canyon. Because, of course, when we talk about global climate change, and I talk to my kids about this, they say, oh, yeah, I know it's important, but come on, what can Vermont really do to make it important? So you think because we bought a pellet stove, we're really going to stop global climate change? Or, so you want, usually it's this, so you want me to walk because of climate change? You think driving me, into town is going to make the difference? And I like to think about the Grand Canyon, right? How many of you have ever been to the Grand Canyon? So it's incredible, right? You can hardly imagine that you can see the bottom. And of course, it was created by a lot of water over time. Individual drops of water. And if ever you had water drip on your hands, water is kind of like soft and squishy, right? It's not, it's hard to imagine that same drop of water could have created the Grand Canyon. But think about it, it's like us. Each one of us is a drop of water. And if each one of us together decide we're going to accomplish this, that we're going to change the direction of how we live so we can address global climate change, we can be the drops of water that together create the Grand Canyon. So I want to leave you with that image. I want to thank you. I want to congratulate you and hope that you've done